Hello Jupiter class, and today we are going to read chapter 5 of Mr. Majeika, and it is called, I let you in for a sneak peek yesterday, didn't I? I wonder if you can remember. It was called The Disappearing Bottle. And here's the bottle. It's got, I wonder what it's got on. It's like some sort of angel wings. I wonder what might be in that bottle. It was about 3 weeks after this that several of class 3 went to see a film about Superman. The best bit, said Jodie to Pete and Thomas, was when he flew right over those tall buildings. I'd love to be able to fly like that. Do you think people ever can? I shouldn't have thought so, said Pete. But we could ask Mr. Magic, I'm sure he'd know. So when class 3 were beginning their next lesson, Jodie did ask him, Mr. Magic, can you really fly like Superman? Mr. Majeika smiled over his glasses. If you mean me, then certainly not. I'm too old for such things, but someone a bit younger could manage it with a little help. Do you mean a little magic? Asked Jodie. Mr. Majeika nodded. Rubbish, shouted Hamish Bigmore. You couldn't make anyone fly, Mr. Magic. No one could. It's scientifically impossible. Since the business of the frog, Hamish Bigmore had been behaving worse than ever. Obviously, he thought Mr. Majeika wouldn't dare to do anything else to him. Mr. Majeika sighed wearily. It is not rubbish, Hamish Bigmore, but I don't intend to waste time showing you. Oh, do, please do, said Jodie, and soon there was a chorus of yes do, Mr. Magic. Couldn't you just once? Of course he can't, sneered Hamish Bigmore. Very well then, snapped Miss Majeika. Just to prove Hamish Bigmore wrong, I will, but it'll have to wait until tomorrow, when I can bring the potion. Everyone fell silent, wondering what the potion was. When the next day came, Mr. Majeika seemed at first to have forgotten all about the promise, for he said nothing about it. At last, Jodie asked him, Did you bring the flying potion, Mr. Magic? Mr. Magic frowned. Well, I did, but I really think the whole idea is a big mistake. I'd much rather we forgot about it all. These things have a way of getting out of hand. There you are, jeered Hamish Bigmore. I told you he couldn't do it. Oh. Really? Hamish Bigmore, you're enough to try the patience of a witch's broomstick, grumbled Mr. Majeika. I suppose I'll have to do it, just to keep you quiet. Do what, Mr. Magic? Asked Thomas. Why, give you all some of the flying potion, said Mr. Majeika. There was a happy uproar. What, all of us? Asked Pete. Are we all going to be able to fly? Well, it'll have to be all or none, answered Mr. Majeika. Can you imagine how jealous everyone would be if I only let 1 or 2 of you do it? But it won't be proper flying, mind, just a little hover in the air. The potion is far too precious to be wasted. Class 3 tried to make him change his mind and allow them to fly properly, but he wouldn't. So in the end, they queued up and were each given a small spoonful by Mr. Majeika. It was green, sticky, and tasted like a rather nice cough mixture. Only Hamish Bigmore refused to have any. He said the whole idea was silly. As soon as they had taken it, class 3 began to jump up and down in the hope of taking off into the air. But nothing happened. They were all dreadfully disappointed. There you are, sneered Hamish Bigmore. I told you it doesn't work. Oh, but it does, said Mr. Majeika. I forgot to tell you that it takes exactly half an hour before anything happens. So we must get on with the lesson for the next half an hour and then see. It was a very long, slow half an hour, and even when it ended, nothing happened to class 3. What's gone wrong? Jodie asked Mr. Majeika. Nothing, answered Mr. Majeika, smiling. You can't just sit there and expect to fly without doing anything. Do you mean we should wave our arms about or something? Asked Pete. Mr. Majeika shook his head. No, my friend, the secret is to think about flying. If the notion of flying comes into your head, then hey presto. I'm thinking hard about it, said Jodie. I'm thinking about floating up in the air from my desk and oh! Suddenly she found herself doing it. In a moment, they were all doing it. It was a very peculiar feeling. You simply had to think about leaving the ground, and you did. What's more, once you were in the air, if you thought about spinning round like a top, you found yourself doing it. Pete said, I'm going to think about floating across the room to the door. And there, he was doing just that. So I'm going to show you some of the children from the desks are flying up the top now. I wonder who sat down. Can you remember who refused to have the flying potion? The only thing that disappointed them was that they were never far from the floor. Oh, can't you let us go higher? They pleaded with Mr. Majeika. He shook his head. Too risky, he said. You might bump your heads on the ceiling or do all kinds of dreadful things. And anyway, I want to save my precious flying potion. It always wears off in half an hour, however much you take, so it would be an awful waste to give you lots of it. Alas, it did wear off in half an hour, to everyone's regret, and all too soon. They were down on the ground again, quite unable to float, however much they thought about it. Well, my friend, said Mr. Majeika, I hope you enjoyed that. And he turned to Hamish Bigmore, who had been sitting watching everyone else float through the air. Hope you believe me now. Oh, yes, Mr. Magic, answered Bigmore, with a rather peculiar smile on his face. Very good, said Mr. Majeika. Well, then, let me put the potion away and we can get on again with our proper lessons. Which today... He stopped suddenly. What happened to the potion? He said. The bottle had vanished. Where's the potion? Said Mr. Majeika again in an anxious voice. It was on my desk. Someone's picked it up and hidden it. Will they please return it at once? No one said anything. Mr. Majeika turned to Hamish Bigmore. Hamish, he said. Somehow, I have a feeling that you're behind this. Hamish shook his head. Oh no, Mr. Majeika, he said sweetly. Why should I do a thing like that? Mr. Majeika looked at him steadily. Turn out your pockets, he said to Hamish, but the bottle wasn't in Hamish's pockets. After that, Mr. Majeika searched everyone in class 3, saying he did so. Oh dear, I knew I shouldn't have brought the potion into school. One of you have played a wretched trick on me, and it's quite unfair. Perhaps, suggested Hamish Bigmore, the bottle itself can fly and has flown away. He laughed uproariously, but Mr. Majeika was not amused. Nowhere could the bottle be found. And by the end of school that day, Mr. Majeika was looking very worried and very cross. I'm sure it's Hamish, said Pete to Thomas. He had something tucked under his coat when he left the classroom. Well, said Thomas, I'm sure we'll find out who's got it. Whoever they are, they're bound to start flying pretty soon. And there's Mr. Majeika and Hamish. Do you think Hamish has stolen the potion? On Seesaw, pop a little comment on who you think stole the potion and what has happened to it. And we'll see you for chapter 6 tomorrow, which is... No, not tomorrow, because it's Friday. We will see you on Monday for chapter 6, and it is called Mr. Potter Goes for a Spin. Okay, and I'm going to leave it there. Have a lovely weekend, and we'll see you on Monday.